They say love is love, that the heart wants what it wants. That connection between souls transcends the boundaries society tries to impose. And perhaps this is true in times and places where difference is tolerated, where deviation from expectation is merely noteworthy rather than criminal. But Salem in 1691 was not such a place. Was instead a place where difference meant danger, where love that did not fit prescribed patterns was not romantic rebellion, but actual crime. Punishable not with disapproval but with imprisonment, with trial, with execution. And we loved anyway, loved despite knowing what it would cost. Loved because we could not help ourselves. Loved because denying what we felt seemed like dying slowly instead of living dangerously. And they discovered us as we knew they eventually would, and they called it forbidden love. Called it unnatural affection, called it corruption and perversion and sin against God and nature. And they locked the cell, locked both of us in separate cells in the same prison. And I could hear her crying through the walls, could hear her calling my name, could hear her being broken by the understanding that love had not protected us, that feeling deeply had not created shield, that wanting each other had not made us safe. And I called back to her through the stone, called that I loved her, called that I would love her through anything, called that they could imprison us but could not change what we felt. And I believed this, believed that love was stronger than condemnation, believed that what we had was worth whatever punishment they devised. And I was wrong about everything, was wrong about love's power, about my own strength, about what I would do when they made me choose between her life and our truth. And they did make me choose, did offer me that choice, did show me that love is not stronger than fear, that devotion is not unbreakable, that there is always a price at which you will betray even what you love most. And I found my price, found it and paid it, and she paid for my choice with her life. And I live with this, live with having loved her and destroyed her. Live with the understanding that I was not strong enough for what we attempted, that I broke when tested, that I chose wrong and she died for my weakness. And perhaps that is the real truth about forbidden love, not that it is beautiful and doomed, not that it is tragic and pure, but that it reveals who you are when everything is taken except choice. And what I learned about myself is that I am someone who will betray love to avoid watching it burn, will sacrifice the beloved to escape witnessing their suffering, will choose cowardice over courage when the cost of courage becomes watching someone you love die slowly. And this knowledge has destroyed me more completely than any punishment they could have devised, has made me into someone who survived when she should have died, who lives when living is the cruelest outcome, who breathes while carrying the weight of her death and my responsibility for it. My name is Sarah Winters, and I was born in Salem in 1669 to a family that was respectable and unremarkable, that followed all rules, that never drew attention, that taught me that invisibility was safety, that conformity was survival, that being like everyone else was the only way to avoid being destroyed. And I tried to be invisible, tried to conform, tried to be exactly what was expected. And I might have succeeded if I had not met Rachel Morgan, if I had not discovered that there was something in the world worth being visible for, worth risking everything for, worth choosing over safety, and Rachel was that something. Was the first person who made me want to be seen, want to be known, want to exist as myself rather than as carefully constructed performance of acceptability. And we loved each other in a way that was both utterly ordinary and completely impossible. Loved each other in the way that people have always loved each other, with devotion and tenderness and the desire to build life together. And the only thing that made our love forbidden was that we were both women, both female in a place and time where women loving women was not just disapproved, but was seen as corruption, as witchcraft, as evidence of demonic influence. And we knew this, knew that discovery meant death, knew that we could never be public, never be acknowledged, never be safe. And we loved anyway because we could not help it. Because denying what we felt seemed worse than hiding it. We were careful, were so careful, met only in secret, only in places where we could not be observed, only at times when everyone else was occupied. And we built our relationship in stolen moments, in hours carved from the edges of days, in spaces between obligations. And it was enough, was more than enough, was everything, was worth the fear and the hiding and the constant vigilance. And we talked about running, about leaving Salem, about finding somewhere we could live openly, somewhere our love would not be crime. And perhaps such places existed somewhere in the world, but we did not know where, did not have money to search, did not have means to simply disappear. And so we stayed and hid, stayed and loved in secret. Stayed and hoped that if we were careful enough we could continue indefinitely, could build entire lives in the margins, could grow old together in hiding. And perhaps we could have, perhaps we would have, perhaps our carefulness would have been sufficient if not for Hannah Pierce, if not for being seen, if not for one moment of inattention that destroyed everything we had built. Hannah Pierce was a widow who lived alone in a house on the edge of Salem, and we had thought the house empty that afternoon, had thought everyone was in the village square for the market, had thought we were safe to meet there, to have a few hours together in a place with walls and a door and something resembling privacy. And we were wrong. Hannah had stayed home, had been in the back room, had heard us enter, had listened, had watched through a crack in the door, had seen us together, had seen us kiss, had seen us hold each other, had seen love that she recognized but could not accept, and she had run directly to the minister, had reported what she had seen, had described it in detail that left no room for misinterpretation or excuse. And they came for us that evening, came to our separate homes, came with constables and accusations, came with ropes and certainty, and we were both arrested, both imprisoned, both charged with unnatural affection, with corrupting each other, with practicing witchcraft through perversion. And I heard Rachel through the prison walls that first night, heard her crying, heard her calling for me, heard her asking why, asking how this happened, asking what we would do, and I called back that I loved her, that we would survive this, that love was stronger than their hatred, and I believed it when I said it, believed that somehow we would find a way through, and I was so wrong, was naive in a way that seems impossible now but was absolute then. The minister came to see me on the third day, came alone, came to make me an offer that he said was mercy, but that I understood was choice. The same impossible choice they had been making people face for months. The choice between confession and execution, between betraying yourself and dying. And he said I could live if I confessed, if I admitted that what Rachel and I had done was sin, if I acknowledged that our love was corruption, if I testified that Rachel had seduced me, had used unnatural means to make me desire her, had corrupted me through witchcraft. And if I did this, if I blamed her, if I made her the source and myself the victim, I would be spared, would be seen as someone who had been tempted and had fallen but who could be saved through repentance. And Rachel would hang, would be executed as the witch who had corrupted me. And this was the choice, this was the offer. Save myself by destroying her, or refuse, and we would both hang, both die, both be executed for the crime of loving each other. And he gave me time to think, gave me until morning to decide. And I spent that night in darkness trying to choose between dying with her and living after betraying her. Trying to decide if loving her meant dying beside her, or living to remember her. Trying to understand what she would want, what she would choose if she were offered the same deal. And I could not know, could not ask, could not confer, could only decide alone in the darkness what our love was worth, what her life was worth, what my own integrity was worth. I chose wrong, chose to live, chose to testify against her, chose to save myself by making her monster, and I have never forgiven myself, will never forgive myself. Carry the weight of that choice like a stone in my chest that grows heavier rather than lighter with time. And when the minister came in the morning, I said yes, said I would confess, said I would testify, said I would do whatever they wanted if they would spare me, and he looked satisfied, looked like this was what he had expected. Looked like everyone eventually chose themselves when the choice was forced. And he arranged it. Arranged my confession, arranged my testimony, arranged the trial where I would speak against Rachel and save myself. And I did it, I actually did it. I stood in the courtroom before the village and I said that Rachel had seduced me, had used unnatural arts to make me desire her, had corrupted my natural affections through witchcraft, and I said she had initiated everything, had pursued me, had made me believe that what we were doing was acceptable when I had known it was sin. And I watched Rachel's face as I spoke, watched her understand what I was doing, watched her realize I was choosing life over loyalty, choosing survival over solidarity, and I saw betrayal in her eyes, saw hurt so deep it seemed to break her from inside, saw her mouth my name like a question, and I could not look at her, could not maintain eye contact, could only speak my lines and finish my testimony and step down and refuse to meet her gaze. And she was convicted that afternoon, was convicted largely on my testimony, was sentenced to hang in 2 days, and I was released. Was freed because I had been victim rather than perpetrator, had been corrupted rather than corrupter. And I walked out of the courtroom a free woman while she was dragged back to her cell to wait for execution. And I heard her screaming my name, heard her calling me, heard her asking why, and I did not answer, could not answer. Simply walked away from her voice and her pain and the love I had destroyed to preserve myself. They let me see her once before the execution, let me visit her cell because the minister thought it would be good for my redemption. Thought seeing the consequences of her corruption would strengthen my repentance. And I went because I needed to see her, needed to explain, needed to make her understand why I had chosen this way. And she was sitting in the corner of the cell and she looked at me and there was nothing in her eyes. No anger or hurt or love, just emptiness, just the look of someone who has been hollowed out. And I said I was sorry, said I had done it to save us both, said that at least this way one of us would live, said that my surviving meant our love survived in some way. And she laughed, actually laughed. And it was the saddest sound I have ever heard. And she said our love had died the moment I testified against her. Had died when I chose myself over us, had died when I made her monster to make myself victim. And she said I had not saved anything, had only destroyed her while keeping myself breathing. And she said the cruelest thing, said she wished she had never met me, wished she had never loved me, wished she had chosen anyone else because anyone else would have been braver than I was, would have stood beside her, would have died with her if dying was required. And she said I should not come to the execution, should not watch her die, should not use her death as spectacle to ease my own guilt. And she turned her back on me and she said nothing else, said nothing when I called her name, said nothing when I begged her to understand, said nothing when I told her I loved her, just sat with her back to me in silence until the guard came to take me away. And that was the last time I saw her alive, saw her back, saw her rejection, saw the consequence of my choice reflected in her refusal to even look at me. I did not go to the execution, followed her instruction, stayed in my room while they hanged her, stayed there listening to the village gather, listening to the minister pray, listening to the crowd respond, and I knew the moment it happened, knew the moment she died, felt something break inside me that has never healed, felt the weight of her death settle on me in a way that has never lifted. And I understood that I had not saved myself, had only condemned myself to different punishment, to living with what I had done, to carrying her death, to knowing that I had loved her and betrayed her, and that the love had not been strong enough to prevent the betrayal. And this knowledge is worse than any execution, is suffering that does not end, is guilt that grows rather than diminishes, is the understanding that I am not the person I thought I was, that when tested I failed, that my love was not what I claimed it was, that I am someone who will sacrifice the beloved to avoid suffering. And this is who I am, who I will always be, and I cannot escape it, cannot die to escape it because living is my punishment. Living with this is what I chose, and I must carry it. They found me 3 days after Rachel's execution, found me in my room with my wrists opened, with blood everywhere, with a note that said I could not carry this, could not live with what I had done, could not breathe while she could not. And they saved me, brought a physician who stopped the bleeding, who bandaged my wrists, who kept me alive when I wanted to die. And they said God was giving me another chance, said suicide was sin, said I should be grateful for being saved, and I was not grateful, was angry at being saved, wanted to die, wanted to stop carrying this. And they watched me after that, watched me constantly to prevent another attempt. And eventually I stopped trying, stopped seeking death, accepted that I would live with this, that living with this was my punishment, that there was no escape except through time, and time did not heal, time did not ease, time only accumulated, only added years to the weight I carried. and I have carried it for so long now that I cannot remember what it felt like to not carry it. Cannot imagine existing without this weight, and perhaps that is justice. Perhaps that is appropriate punishment. Perhaps someone who betrayed love to avoid watching it suffer should suffer by surviving, should live knowing what they did, should carry the weight until weight is all they are. But I did not die, not completely, not finally. Because years later, decades later, when I was old and tired and ready to finally stop, I was visited by a woman who said she practiced the old ways, who said she had been watching me, who said she knew what I had done and what it had cost me. And she said Rachel had not died completely either, said she had been saved the same way others had been saved, had been cut down after death was declared, had been brought back through the old magic. And she said Rachel lived still, lived in the forest beyond Salem. And she asked if I wanted to see her, if I wanted the chance to face her, to speak to her, to perhaps find some kind of peace. And I said yes, said it immediately, said it desperately, said I would do anything for the chance to see her again, to explain again, to try to make her understand why I had chosen as I did. And the woman led me into the forest, led me to a place deep in the trees where others lived, where those who had been saved from executions built lives beyond Salem's reach. And Rachel was there, was alive, was older but unmistakably her. And when she saw me, she went very still, very quiet, and I started to speak. Started to say I was sorry, started to explain, and she held up her hand and she said she did not want my apology, did not want my explanation, did not want anything from me except one thing. She wanted me to understand what my choice had cost her, wanted me to know that she had lived through the hanging, had felt the rope break her neck, had felt herself die, had experienced death and the terror of it. And she had been brought back carrying that death inside her, carrying the knowledge of what dying felt like. And she carried it because I had chosen to let her die rather than die with her. And she wanted me to know that, wanted me to carry that knowledge the way she carried the death. And then she said I should leave, said seeing me hurt, said my presence was reminder of betrayal, said she had built a life here and I was not part of it, would never be part of it, and she turned away from me just as she had turned away in the cell. And I left knowing that she was alive but that we would never have each other, that my choice had killed not just her but us, had destroyed not just her body temporarily but our love permanently. And I carry this too, carry the knowledge that she lives without me, lives having forgiven herself for loving me but having never forgiven me for betraying her. And perhaps this is the worst punishment of all, knowing that she exists somewhere, breathing and living and being, but that I destroyed any chance of being part of that existence, destroyed it myself, destroyed it through choice, destroyed it because when tested I was not strong enough for the love I claimed to feel, and she was. She chose to die rather than betray, chose integrity over survival, chose love over breathing, and I chose wrong, chose self over her, chose living over loving. And I have lived with this choice for 50 years and I will carry it until I finally die. And perhaps even after, perhaps this is the kind of guilt that transcends death, that follows you beyond ending, that you carry through whatever comes after. And if so, if I must carry this eternally, then that is what I deserve, that is justice. That is the appropriate punishment for someone who loved and betrayed, who was given the chance to stand beside their beloved and instead push them toward death to save themselves. And I am that person, will always be that person. And no amount of regret or suffering or time will ever change what I did or who I am. And I remain carrying this, remain as example, remain as warning, remain as proof that forbidden love is not romantic tragedy but actual test. And some of us fail that test, fail it completely, fail it in ways that destroy not just love but the lovers themselves. And I failed. And I carry the failure and I will carry it always. And that is my story, that is my truth. That is what they mean when they say forbidden love. They mean love that costs everything, that tests everything, that reveals who you are when everything else is stripped away. And what I am is someone who loved and was not strong enough for that love. And Rachel is someone who loved and was strong enough to die for it. And she lives while I exist. And perhaps that is the real injustice, that I survived my weakness while she survived her strength. And we both carry what we chose, and neither of us is free.